The order came through on every channel at once, in a voice that had never once been told no. Helix Station, you are property of the Long Hunger. Power down your weapons, open your locks and kneel. You have 11 minutes. In the old control ring of the station, a man named Owen Marsh did not move. He was 71 years old, and he had keeper's hands, scarred along the knuckles from 40 years of fixing things that other people only knew how to break. He stood at the wide curve of the observation glass and watched the hunter ships slide out of the dark, and he counted them, because counting was the only honest thing a man could do at a moment like this. He counted 960. They were beautiful, in the way a knife is beautiful. Lean, dark, swept back like the spine of some animal built only to run something down and tear it open. They had no straight lines. The Long Hunger did not build straight lines. They built curves and barbs and long-reaching claws, and every one of those 960 ships had a forward maw that opened as it came, the way a mouth opens before it bites. Behind Owen, the station was full of people who had stopped breathing. Helix Station was not a warship. It had never pretended to be. It was a trade ring, an old wheel of habitat decks and cargo arms turning slow over a green and gray world called Senat, and 12,000 people lived inside its skin. Farmers, welders, children, people who had come out to the edge to be left alone, and who had been left alone for 19 years, right up until the hunters found the scent of them. Keeper Marsh. The voice belonged to a young woman at the comm panel, Bria Holt, 26, her hands flat on the console to keep them from shaking. They're repeating it, 11 minutes. They want us to say the word. What word? Owen said, though he knew. They want us to say we kneel, out loud, on open channel, so everyone hears it. She swallowed. They want it for the record. That was the part that turned Owen's stomach. Not the 960 ships. Not the 11 minutes. The hunters did not simply want to take Helix Station. They wanted the people inside it to say the word first, to put their own surrender into the air, so the whole quiet edge of the galaxy would learn what happened to anything that the Long Hunger decided to chase. It was not a threat, it was a performance. And 12,000 people were meant to be the audience and the act both. Owen looked at the 960 ships, and he thought about how a thing that hunts only ever respects one thing, and it is not mercy. A councilwoman named Petra Voss came running into the control ring, breathless, her face gray. She ran the agricultural decks, and she had never in her life had to decide anything heavier than a harvest. Owen, the council is split. Half of them want to say the word. They think if we kneel they'll spare the children. They've got the open channel keyed. They're about to do it. She grabbed his sleeve. Tell them not to. Or tell them to. I don't know. You're the only one who's seen these things before. What do we do? Owen turned from the glass and looked at her, slow and steady, and the steadiness of an old man at the end of the worst minute of 12,000 lives is a thing that can carry a room. Petra, he said, tell the council to take their hands off that channel. Nobody says the word. Not for the children. Especially not for the children. They'll kill the children if we don't. They'll kill the children if we do, Owen said. I have watched the Long Hunger work for 40 years. They do not spare. They have never spared. The word isn't a price they're collecting. It's a thing they enjoy, and I will not let 12,000 people spend their last breath giving these things the one thing they actually came for. He held her eyes until she stopped shaking. Take their hands off the channel. Go. She went. Owen turned back to the comm panel. Bria, he said, get me a private line. Not to them. The other way. The long line. She turned. Keeper. There's nothing on the long line. There hasn't been anything on the long line in 19 years. Nobody's out there. Open it anyway. Her hands moved. The long line was a single old transmitter on the far cargo arm, a relic from when Helix had still believed somebody might come if it called. A deep antenna pointed back the way they had all come, toward the worlds where the lights were thicker. Nobody used it. The power it drew was the kind a station begrudged. But Owen had kept it warm for 19 years, oiled and tuned and ready, because that was what a keeper did. You kept the thing that might one day matter. It's open, Bria said. What do I send? Owen did not look away from the glass. The lead hunter ship had come close enough now that he could see the segments in its hull, the way the plating overlapped, like the scales of something that had been alive once. He could see the maw. It was open. "Send our name," he said. "Send the count. 960 ships, 11 minutes. And send the word they want us to say." He paused. "And then send one more line. From me. Say, Helix will not kneel. Send it to whoever still listens. Then turn the long line off so they don't trace it." Bria's fingers hovered. "Keeper, if nobody's listening, that line just means we made them angry for nothing." "If nobody's listening," Owen said, "then it doesn't matter what we do. They were always going to do this." He finally turned and looked at her, and his old face was very calm. "But I have kept that antenna warm for 19 years, Bria. I am not going to find out it worked by being polite." She sent it. Owen watched the small light on the long line panel flare and then go dark as she closed it. For 9 seconds, nothing happened, and Owen thought, well, there it is. 19 years of warm wire for 9 seconds of a dead man's pride. Then the hunter voice came back, and for the first time it had something in it that was not certainty. "Repeat your last transmission, Helix Station. You are not authorized to use a long-range carrier. Repeat your transmission." Owen smiled, just a little, with no warmth in it at all. They had heard the long line go out. They had not expected it. A thing that hunts does not like surprises, because a surprise is the one thing it cannot run down. "Bria," he said, "tell them we already said it. Tell them the word is no." She told them. The 11-minute clock was at 9 minutes and 40 seconds when the lead hunter ship stopped repeating its demand and simply began to open fire on the outer cargo arm, slow and deliberate, the way a predator bites a wounded thing once to see if it will scream. The cargo arm was empty. Owen had emptied it years ago and never told the council, because a keeper keeps a thing in reserve. But the hunters did not know that, and they bit it anyway, and the arm broke off in a long, slow tumble of metal and frozen air, and across the station, 12,000 people felt the wheels shudder under their feet, and understood, finally and completely, that the 11 minutes had never been real. The long hunger had never intended to let them kneel. They had intended to make them say the word, and then take them apart anyway, because the saying of the word was the only part the hunters wanted. In the control ring, a man named Hale, 50, broad, with 2 daughters on the agricultural deck, grabbed Owen's arm. "You did this," Hale said. "You said no for all of us. You old fool. You killed us all so you could keep your antenna warm." Owen did not pull his arm free. He looked at Hale, and there was something terrible and quiet in his eyes. "Hale," he said, "how long do you think a thing that hunts lets you live after you kneel?" Hale had no answer. "It doesn't," Owen said. "It eats the ones that run, and it eats the ones that kneel, and the only difference is the ones that kneel die hearing themselves beg. I have watched the long hunger work for 40 years, son. I have seen what a kneeling world looks like afterward. I would not give them the word. Not for 12,000. Not for 1,000,000. He turned back to the glass. "But I will tell you what I did do. I kept a thing warm for 19 years, and I just sent it the word no, on the long line, the way you send a message to family." "Family?" Hale stared at him. "We have no family out there. Earth forgot the edge. Earth forgot us." The clock hit 8 minutes. Then, on the deep gray edge of the system, far out past the green and gray curve of Senat, something the hunters had not detected, and could not have detected, began very quietly to slow down out of the dark. Bria's panel lit up with a return Owen had not dared to hope for. A single carrier signal, riding the same old long-line frequency, answering on the channel a keeper had kept warm for 19 years. There were no words on it. There was only a registry mark and a heading, and the heading was straight at Helix Station, and the registry mark was a name Owen had not heard spoken aloud since he was a young man. Cold Harbor. He read it 3 times. His hands, the scarred keeper's hands, were not steady anymore. "Bria," he said, very softly, "tell Hale who that is." Bria's voice came out cracked. "It's a warship. It's an old human warship. The registry says she was retired before I was born. The registry says she's a museum hull. The registry says she has no crew, and no weapons, and no power, and she's been a monument over Mars for 30 years. She looked up. Keeper, she can't be here. She's a museum. Mars is 19 light-years away. There's no ship that crosses 19 light-years in 8 minutes. There's one, Owen said. There was always one. We just told her to sleep. Owen Marsh looked at the heading driving straight toward 960 hunters, with 8 minutes on the clock, and he let out a breath he felt like he had been holding for 19 years. Tell the hunters, he said. Tell them the word is still no, and tell them the family is coming. The long hunger had a creature that watched the screens, and its name in its own tongue meant something close to first teeth, and it had eaten 11 worlds in its long life, and never once been wrong about a hunt. First Teeth crouched at the heart of the lead ship, in a wet dark room where the displays glowed up at it from below, and it watched the strange new carrier signal come in from the edge of the system, and for the first time in a very long while, it felt something cold move along the bones of its back. The pack had found Helix Station the way it found everything, by patience. The long hunger did not race across the galaxy, it walked it, slowly, generation by generation, and it learned the scent of a thing before it ever showed itself, and then it came in numbers no prey could ever fight, and it asked for the word, because the word was the part that mattered. A hunt was not complete until the prey admitted it was prey. That was the law of the pack, older than the pack's memory of its own first world. You did not simply kill, you made the killed thing know. And Helix had not said the word. That alone was strange. Prey always said the word. 12,000 soft creatures on a turning wheel, with no guns and no fleet and no hope. And they had said no, and they had sent that no out on a long carrier into empty space, the way an animal that knows it is dying still calls for its mother. First Teeth had let it pass. Pride, it had thought. The doomed often found a strange courage in the last minutes, and that courage was sweet, because it made the breaking of them later all the more complete. Let them call. There was no one to call. Except now there was an answer. Read me the answer, First Teeth said, in the clicking, layered speech of the pack. A smaller hunter, second track, bent over the display. It carries no message, First Teeth, only a name and a heading. The name is in the human tongue. Our archive has it. The name is Cold Harbor. And the heading? At us. It comes at us. First Teeth showed its teeth, which among the pack was not a smile but a question. One ship comes at 960, then it is a fool, or it is bait. Find the rest of it. A human does not send one ship at a pack. Find the fleet behind the one ship. The hunters searched. They were very good at searching. The long hunger had hunted across 40,000 years and built sensors that could read the heat of a single warm body across a planet's whole night side. They searched the edge of the Senat system, every shadow of every moon, the long dark behind the green and gray world, the cold dust at the system's rim. There was no fleet. There was one ship. One ship, second track said, and the word came out of it strangely, because the pack had a deep instinct, older than thought, that said a thing that comes alone at a pack is either already dead, or is the most dangerous thing in the dark, and there is no way to know which until it is too late. Read me her archive, First Teeth said. If our records hold this Cold Harbor, read me what she did. Second track went into the deep archive of the long hunger, the long memory of 40,000 years of hunting, and it found the name, and when it read what it found, its voice changed. The archive holds her, First Teeth. From the old war, the war we won, the war where we hunted the humans to silence, and they pulled back to their 3 worlds and went quiet. A pause. The archive says Cold Harbor ended a pack, at a place the humans called the Verge. The archive says the pack numbered 2,200. The archive says there were no survivors. No survivors of the human ship? No survivors of the pack. Second track said. Cold Harbor took 2,200 ships and was not scratched. And then she went home, and we wrote in the archive that the humans had learned to kneel, because after the Verge they never came out again. For 40,000 years they never came out again. The cold along First Teeth's spine became a thing it could no longer pretend was not there. They did not learn to kneel, it said slowly. They learned to wait. Then we break off, second track said. We leave the wheel. We do not wake the thing from the archive. No. First Teeth's claws closed on the wet dark floor. If we break off because of one ship and an old record, we are no longer the long hunger. We have never broken off. We have never run. We are the warning that walks the galaxy, and we do not become the warned. The archive says she took 2,200. The archive is old. The archive lies, the way the doomed always lie about their last stand. We are 960, and we are here, and there is one of her. The teeth showed. We take the station. We make them say the word. The one ship will watch its prize die, and then we eat it slow. So the pack did what the pack always did. 960 hunter ships ignored the single carrier coming out of the dark, and they fell on Helix Station to finish what the 11 minutes had started. And inside the station, Owen Marsh watched the hunters come, and did not look afraid. "They're not turning to face her," Bria said, her voice tight. "They're not even tracking her. They're coming for us. All of them." "Good," Owen said. Hale stared at him. "Good? There are 1,000 of them, Marsh, and they are about to come through our hull, and you say good?" "They're not afraid of her," Owen said. "That's the good part. A thing that hunts decides what's dangerous by what it knows. They don't know her, so they decided she's nothing. And the worst place to be standing, son, is in front of a thing you decided was nothing, in the half-second after you find out you were wrong." He leaned to the glass, watching the single old hull come on. "Get everyone off the outer decks. Get them to the core. Now. And Bria, open the long line one more time. I want to talk to her." "To the warship? Keep her? She's a museum. There's no one aboard to talk to." "There's something aboard," Owen said. "Museums don't change course on their own. Open the line." She opened it. For a long moment, there was only carrier hiss. And then a voice came back, and it was not a young voice, and it was not exactly a human voice, but it was something close, something old and dry and patient, a voice that had been waiting in the dark over Mars for 30 years, for someone to send the word no on a frequency it remembered. "Helix Station, this is Cold Harbor. I have your long line. I have your count. 960. I have your word." A pause, like a breath that did not need to be taken. "Hold your core. Vent your outer rings. Do not let them aboard. I will be there in 6 minutes." Bria looked at Owen with her mouth open. "Who is that? Who's aboard her?" "Her," Owen said simply. "That's her. That's the ship. They left a mind in the old hulls, Bria. The deep ones. The ones from the long war. They left a mind so the ship would never have to wait alone. When they made Cold Harbor a museum, they didn't take the mind out. You don't take the mind out. You just tell her to sleep, and you keep her over Mars where children can look at her, and you forget she was ever anything but a monument." He looked at the heading. "And then one day, 19 light years away, a keeper sends the word no down a long line, and the museum wakes up, and she remembers exactly what she was built to do." And what was she built to do? Owen did not answer for a moment. He was watching the hunters open their maws as they came in over the station, 960 mouths opening at once. "She was built for them," he said. "She was built in the long war, against the long hunger, before your grandmother was born. They thought they'd hunted us to nothing back then. They thought they'd won. We let them think it. We pulled back. We went quiet. We put our war hulls over our worlds and called them monuments. And we let the long hunger believe Earth was a kneeling thing." He turned to her. "Cold Harbor isn't a museum, Bria. She's a debt. And the long hunger just walked into a system where one was still owed." Owen moved through the control ring as he gave the orders. An old keeper who had run drills for 19 years that nobody else had taken seriously. "Seal the core. Pull the agricultural decks down. Open every inner bulkhead so the people could flow inward, like water finding the bottom of a bowl." He had drawn these plans alone, on long quiet nights, against a day he had only half believed would come, and now that it had come, he found, to his own surprise, that his hands knew exactly what to do, and that the knowing of it kept the fear small enough to carry. "They'll think the venting is panic," Bria said, watching the hunters' formation tighten over the dying outer rings. "They'll think we're falling apart." "Let them think it," Owen said. "A thing that hunts wants the prey to fall apart. It reads the falling apart as the beginning of the kill. Every second they spend believing we're breaking is a second they're not looking at the dark behind them." He glanced at the long line panel. Dark now, the wire that had done its work. "We're not breaking, Bria. We're making room. There's a difference. And the difference is the whole reason we're going to be alive at the end of this hour." The first hunter ship reached the station's outer ring and bit down. It got a mouthful of vented vacuum and broke away plating, because Owen had already given the order, and the outer rings were empty, and the hull there was blowing out into space in long white plumes. Nothing to hold, nothing to tear, nothing to make scream. The hunter's maw closed on empty metal, and the ship reared back, confused, the way an animal recoils from a thing that does not behave like meat. And 6 minutes became 4. In the wet dark of the lead hunter, First Teeth watched the station vent its rings and felt the cold along its spine grow worse. Prey did not vent itself. Prey clung to its air. This wheel was throwing away the very thing that kept its soft creatures alive, blowing out its own decks, so that there was nothing for the pack to bite, and that was not the behavior of a thing that was afraid to die. That was the behavior of a thing that was buying time. "They are stalling us," First Teeth said slowly. "For the one ship. The one ship is not bait. The station is the bait. The one ship is the hunt." Second track turned. "Then we break off. We take the one ship now. All of us. Before it arrives." "No." First Teeth's claws closed. "If we break off the station, we admit one human ship can move 960 of us. We do not admit that. We have never admitted that. We take the station. We take the one ship. We take all of it. And we make the whole edge of the galaxy hear them say the word." It bared its teeth at the display. "Send 40 ships to meet the one. 40 is enough to swallow a star. The rest? Finish the wheel." 40 hunter ships peeled off from the swarm and turned out toward the dark, toward the single old hull coming in, and they spread into the formation the pack used to surround and tear, the killing crescent, the shape that had ended 11 worlds. Cold Harbor came on into the middle of the crescent and did not change course, and did not slow, and did not fire. "She's not firing," Bria whispered. "Keep her. They're all around her. 40 of them, and she's not firing." "She doesn't fire at the edges," Owen said. "Watch." The 40 hunters closed the crescent, the killing shape sealed around the single human hull, 40 maws open, 40 ships, built for nothing but this. And at the moment the crescent closed, at the exact moment when the pack believed it had the prey inside its mouth, Cold Harbor did the one thing the long hunger had no archive for. She stopped, not slowed, stopped, dead in the void, in the space of a single heartbeat, all her terrible speed gone in an instant, into something the hunters could not see and could not understand, a thing the long war had taught human ships to do, and the long hunger had spent 40,000 years forgetting was possible. The 40 hunters, built to run prey down, built around the law that prey always runs, flew past her on either side, because they could not stop the way she had stopped. The crescent that was meant to close around her, closed instead around nothing, and 40 hunter ships found themselves suddenly past their target, scattered, turned the wrong way, their open maws pointed at empty dark, and their unarmored backs pointed at the thing they had come to kill. And Cold Harbor, sitting still in the center of the broken crescent, opened her eyes. That was how Owen always thought of it afterward, when he was old enough that this day was the only one he could remember clearly. Not that she fired, that she opened her eyes. Along the whole length of her ancient hull, ports that had been dark for 30 years over Mars, came alight all at once. 1,000 small, cold blue points, and they were not running lights. They were gun ports, and behind each one was something the long war had built to end a thing that hunts, and the museum hull that 12,000 people had been told was an empty monument, lit up like a city turning every one of its lights toward a single street. "Identify your vessel," First Teeth's voice came across the open channel, and for the first time in its 11-world life, there was a question in it that it did not want answered. "Identify. You are one ship. You will name yourself to the pack." The dry, old, patient voice answered on every channel at once, the way the order to kneel had come, so that 12,000 people in the station core and 960 hunters in the dark all heard it together. "You already know my name," Cold Harbor said. "You gave it to me. In your tongue, I am the thing your young are told to fear in the dark. You hunted my makers across 40,000 years, and you thought you had finished us, and you wrote in your archive that Earth had learned to kneel." A pause. "Your archive is wrong. We did not learn to kneel. We learned to wait. Read your record of the Verge. First Teeth. I am the ship in it. I am the same ship. I have not changed. Only you forgot. And then she fired, and the long war came back to the edge of the galaxy. The first volley took the 40 hunters in their unarmored backs, and it did not scatter them, and it did not cripple them. It ended them. 40 ships that had ended 11 worlds came apart in the space of 3 seconds, not in fire, but in a cold blue light that opened them along every seam at once, as if some hand had simply taken each ship and pulled it gently into the pieces it had always secretly been. There was no debris cloud, there was no scream. There were 40 hunter ships, and then there was the dark, and the dark was very quiet. In the station core, 12,000 people who had spent 11 minutes waiting to be told to kneel watched on every screen as 40 of the things that had come to eat them simply ceased, and not one of them made a sound, because there are some things too large to cheer. 4 minutes, Owen said quietly, to no one. She said 6, and she did it in 4, and she stopped for 40 of them on the way. Hale was staring at the screen. The big man's hands were shaking now, where Owen's had steadied. What is she? He said. What did we wake up? Owen Marsh looked at the single old hull sitting still in the dark with 1,000 cold blue eyes open, 920 hunters still between her and the station, and he answered honestly. The debt, he said. We woke up the debt. On the station, Hale had gone to the wide glass beside Owen, and the two of them watched the place where 40 hunter ships had been a moment before, and Hale's broad shoulders were shaking now, not with anger, but with the thing that comes after anger, the thing a man feels when he has been certain of his own death, and the universe has quietly informed him it had other plans. I called you a fool, Hale said. You did, Owen said, not unkindly. My girls are on the agricultural deck, Hale said. I told them to be brave, because it would be quick. I told them that, because I believed it. I believed you had killed us all. He swallowed. What is she, Owen? I am asking you honestly, as a man who is going to have to explain this to his daughters. What did you wake up? Owen watched the cold blue eyes hang still in the dark. There's a thing humanity learned in the long war, he said. We learned that the galaxy doesn't fear what you can do. It fears what you might be holding back. The Long Hunger has 960 ships out there because they think numbers are the most frightening thing in the dark. They're not. The most frightening thing in the dark is a thing that has been holding back for 40,000 years and has just decided it doesn't need to anymore. He glanced at Hale. Tell your girls the truth, son. Tell them a wheel full of farmers said no, and the family came. That's a thing worth being brave about. Across the dark, in the wet room at the heart of the pack, First Teeth crouched very still and watched the place where 40 of its ships had been, and it understood, slowly, the way an old hunter understands the thing that finally outranks it, that it had made the one mistake the pack told its young never to make. It had decided a thing was nothing before it knew what the thing was, and then it had read the archive, and known, and decided anyway. And that, the old hunter thought, was the worse of the two mistakes, because the first was ignorance, and the second was pride, and pride is the thing that ends packs. All ships, First Teeth said, and its voice was steady, because it was First Teeth, and it had eaten 11 worlds, and it would not let the pack hear fear in it even now. Turn from the station, turn to the one ship, 920 against 1. We close, we tear, we do not stop, we do not let it stop us. We take the one ship, and then we take the wheel, and we make them all say the word. The teeth showed. It is one ship. We are the Long Hunger. We have never lost a hunt. And 920 hunter ships turned away from 12,000 soft creatures on a turning wheel, and they faced the single human hull, and the hunt that the Long Hunger had walked 40,000 years to begin, became, in the space of one cold blue volley, the hunt that would finally teach the pack what it was to be prey. Owen watched them turn. He watched all of them turn, every one, away from his people and toward the museum, and he felt something break loose in his old chest that he had carried for 19 years. They turned, he said. Bria. They turned off us. She made them turn. She's one ship, Bria whispered. There's 920 of them, Keeper. She can't fight 920. Owen Marsh smiled the small, cold smile again, and this time, there was the faintest thing in it that was almost joy. She isn't going to fight 920, he said. She's going to teach 920. There's a difference. Watch the family work. The 920 came at her in a single tide, and Cold Harbor began to move again, and the long war taught the long hunger its first lesson. The lesson was speed. The pack believed it was fast. For 40,000 years it had been the fastest thing in any sky it entered, and that speed was the spine of its whole way of being. A hunter does not need armor if nothing can outrun it. A hunter does not need to think if it can always get behind the prey. The long hunger had built its ships and its laws and its very soul around the certainty that it would always be the faster thing. Cold Harbor crossed the gap between herself and the leading edge of the swarm before First Teeth finished giving the order to close it. She did not fly the way the hunters flew. The hunters flew like animals, in long, graceful curves, banking and sweeping, beautiful and predictable. Cold Harbor flew like a thing that had no body to protect, no instinct to obey, no fear of the turn that would tear a living crew apart. She went from a dead stop to a speed the pack could not match, in a line so straight and so sudden that to the hunters she did not seem to move at all. She simply was in one place, and then she was inside their formation, and the cold blue light was already opening them along their seams. "She's in among them," Bria said. Her voice had gone very quiet, the quiet of someone watching a thing they will tell their grandchildren about. "Keep her. She's inside the whole swarm. She didn't go around. She went through." "That's the way you fight a thing that hunts in a pack," Owen said. He had pulled a stool to the glass now and sat on it, an old man with his hands folded, watching the debt come due. "A pack is strong when it surrounds you, so you don't let it surround you. You get in the middle, where they can't shoot at you without shooting at each other." They built 920 ships to all point inward at one prey. She just made the prey the place they're all pointing. It was exactly as he said. The hunters had encircled her, and now they could not fire, because behind every target was one of their own. The crescent, the killing shape, the formation that had ended 11 worlds, had become a cage with their enemy at its center, and the pack itself lining every wall. The long hunger had spent 40,000 years learning to surround its prey, and it had never once imagined that the prey might want to be surrounded. Cold Harbor moved through them like a blade through a school of fish, and she fired only inward and outward in the same motion, and every shot found a hunter, and not one shot found her, because she did not stay anywhere long enough to be found. A wing of 50 hunters, the boldest of the young, tried a thing the pack thought clever. They fired not at Cold Harbor, but at the green and gray world beyond her, at Senat itself, at the open colonies on its surface, hoping to make the human ship choose between catching the shots and keeping its place. It was a hostage move, the kind that had broken the will of a dozen worlds, the kind that made prey leave its cover to save its young. The long hunger had won more hunts with cruelty than with claws. Cold Harbor caught every shot. She did not move from her place. She did not have to. Along the side of her hull facing the world, 100 of the cold blue eyes turned, and 100 small flares of light reached out and met the 50 hunters' fire in the dark between the ship and the planet, and not one shot reached Senat, not one. And on the surface of the green and gray world, the open colonies never even knew how close the dark had come to them. And then, having caught the cruelty, Cold Harbor turned the same 100 eyes on the 50 who had tried it, and the 50 came apart, and the old ship's voice came once across the channel, dry and quiet and final. "You may try to make me choose," she said. "I have already chosen. I chose 40,000 years ago. There is nothing behind me that you can reach." In the wet dark, First Teeth heard it, and the cold along its spine reached all the way to the root of it. The hostage move had never failed. In 40,000 years of hunting, the threat to the young had always worked, because all prey loved its young more than it loved itself, and that love was the lever the pack used to lift whole worlds onto their knees. And the human ship had simply caught the threat out of the air, the way a grown thing catches a stone thrown by a child, and had not even moved, and had told the pack that there was nothing behind it to reach because it had already decided, long ago, to stand in front of everything. "It cannot be moved," First Teeth said slowly. "It cannot be drawn. It cannot be threatened. It cannot be outrun, and it cannot be surrounded. And it does not tire, and it does not fear, and it is not in a hurry. The old hunter looked at the dwindling count of its pack. "We have hunted for 40,000 years, and we have built every law we have around the certainty that the prey will run, or hide, or beg, or break. This thing does none of them. We have no law for it. We have never met a thing we had no law for." "Then what do we do?" asked one of the young. "I do not know," said First Teeth, and it was the first time in 11 worlds it had ever said those 4 words, and the saying of them was the beginning of the end of the long hunger's certainty. In the wet dark, First Teeth watched a thing it had no name for. The pack had 100 ways to read a battle, every one of them built on the certainty that the prey would try to escape, and the pack would close the distance. But Cold Harbor was not trying to escape. She was not even, the old hunter realized with a cold that went all the way through it, trying very hard. She moved through the swarm at perhaps half of the speed she had shown coming in, the way a grown thing moves among the young of a smaller animal, unhurried, certain, taking what it reached for and reaching only when it chose. There was no struggle in her. That was the part that broke something in First Teeth's chest. The pack had ended 11 worlds, and every one of those worlds had struggled, had fought, had thrown everything it had at the dark, and the throwing was what made the eating sweet. Cold Harbor was not struggling. She was doing a job she had done before, at a place called the Verge, and she was in no hurry to finish it. 100 hunters, the fastest of the pack, broke for the green and gray world below, not to threaten it now, but to use it, to dive into the thin upper edge of Senate's air, where they believed the human ship was too large and too heavy to follow. It was a sound instinct. A hull the size of Cold Harbor had no business inside a planet's air. Atmosphere tore at things that size, and the heat of entry would peel an ordinary warship to the bone. The 100 dove for the air like fish for the dark under a rock, certain that here, at last, was a place the giant could not go. Cold Harbor went into the air after them. She came down through the upper edge of Senat's sky with the patience of a thing that had done this before, and the air did not tear at her, and the heat of entry slid off her old weathered hull, as if the long war had taught her how to wear a planet's whole atmosphere like a coat. And she moved through the thin high air faster than the 100 hunters who had thought themselves safe in it, and she took them there, in the high cold sky over the colonies, in long cold blue flashes, that the people on the surface saw as a strange and silent lightning far above the clouds. The colonists did not know, that day, that they had watched the long hunger die in their own sky. They only saw the lightning, and then the lightning stopped, and the sky was clear, and somewhere far above them, a weathered gray shape, that should not have been able to fly in air at all, turned, and climbed back out toward the dark, unhurried, to finish what it had started. "It followed them into the air," First Teeth said, and there was nothing left in its voice now but the cold. "A hull that size cannot fly in air. It is not possible." "It does not seem to care what is possible," Second Track said, "and it does not even try to kill us quickly." There was something in the smaller hunter's voice that the pack did not have a word for either, because the pack had never needed one. First Teeth, it is not afraid we will escape. It does not believe we can. "Because we cannot," First Teeth said. "Order the close ranks. 300 ships, tight, all weapons forward, drive straight through her, and out the other side. We cannot stop her with the whole swarm, so we make a spear of 300, and put her through it." 300 hunters drew together into a single dense column, the heaviest thing the pack could make, every maw forward, and they drove at Cold Harbor in a line that nothing the long hunger had ever met had survived. The spear of 300 was the move that had cracked a world called Threnody in half. It was the pack's last great certainty. Cold Harbor turned side on to it and fired down the length of the spear. The 300 did not break the human hull. The human hull unzipped the spear from front to back, one ship and then the next and the next, faster than the column could close the gap, so that the 300 ships drove forward into a wall of cold blue light that ate the front of the column as fast as the back of it pushed, and the spear that had cracked Threnody in half went into Cold Harbor's reach and did not come out the other side at all. There was no other side. There was only the dark and the quiet, where 300 ships had been. The pack tried patience next, because force had failed, and patience was the one thing the long hunger believed it owned more of than any creature in the dark. 110 hunters broke off and went cold and quiet at the very edge of the field, Engines banked to almost nothing, drifting like dead things, and they waited, because a hunter knows that the prey which cannot be beaten in a charge can sometimes be beaten in an hour, when its guard slips, when its attention turns, when it grows tired, the way all living things grow tired. The long hunger had outwaited worlds. It had sat at the edge of a system for a full turn of a planet, motionless, until the prey below decided the danger had passed and came up out of its holes, and then it had fallen on them. Waiting was a weapon. The 110 settled into the dark and made themselves patient, and watched the old human hull for the first sign of the thing every living crew eventually showed, which was fatigue. Cold Harbor did not grow tired. She turned, slow and unhurried, toward the 110 that had decided to outweight her, and her dry old voice came across the field, almost gentle, the way a teacher corrects a student who has made an honest mistake. "You are trying to outlast me," she said. "I understand the thought. It is a good thought, against a living thing, but there is no crew aboard me to grow tired, Hunter. There has been no crew aboard me for 30 years. I have hung over a red world with my eyes closed for longer than your young have been alive, and I did not grow tired of waiting, and I will not grow tired now. You have brought patience to a thing that was built out of it. That is the last mistake your pack will make tonight, and it is the smallest one, and it is somehow the saddest, because it means you have finally understood that you cannot beat me, and you are reaching, in the dark, for the only weapon you have left, and even that one is mine." She took the 110 where they drifted, all at once, the cold blue light reaching out across the field and opening them along their seams before a single one could power its engines back to life, and the patience of the long hunger died in the dark it had chosen to hide in, and the field was quieter than before. The pack tried cunning then, because patience had failed too. 200 hunters powered down their weapons entirely and went still and broadcast, on the open channel, in the clumsy human tongue they had pulled from their archive, the word the long hunger had come to make Helix say. They said it themselves. They said, "We kneel." They said it because they had read, somewhere in the long memory of the pack, that human ships were built around a code, a law about mercy, a thing that made them stay their hand against a foe that surrendered, and the 200 gambled their lives on the hope that the museum was bound by the same gentleness its makers had once been known for. Cold Harbor answered them on the same channel, in the same human tongue, and her dry old voice was not unkind, which was the most terrible part. "I know what you are doing," she said. "You have read that my makers were merciful. They were. They are. Mercy is a thing you offer to a creature that can change, that can lay down what it is and become something better, and humanity has spent its whole history believing that almost anything can. But mercy is not surrender, and it is not blindness, and it does not mean a thing must let itself be eaten by a foe that will only say the word until the moment it is safe to take it back." A pause. "You have not knelt. You have paused. I have hunted your kind for 40,000 years, and I know the difference between a thing that has changed and a thing that is waiting for me to look away. Power up your weapons, or do not. It will not matter." The 200 powered up their weapons, because they were the long hunger, and they could not do otherwise, and the cunning died in the same breath as the force had, and Cold Harbor took them too, 200 more, in the cold blue light that opened them along their seams. On the station, Owen watched the 200 try to say the word, and watched the museum see straight through it, and something in his old chest settled. "She knew," he said quietly. "She knew they didn't mean it. How does a ship that's been asleep for 30 years know a lie when it hears one?" "Because she's old," Bria said softly. "Older than the lie, older than the pack." She watched the dark. "They've been telling the galaxy to say the word for 40,000 years, Keeper. She's the one thing in the dark that's been listening to them do it the whole time." Second track came apart in the 81st second after that, in the next pass. First Teeth felt it go, the way the lead of a pack feels each tooth that is pulled from its mouth, and it gave the order that no pack mind in 40,000 years had ever given. "Hold," it said. "Hold position. Do not close. Do not approach. Hold, and let me think." The pack hesitated. A hunter does not hold. A hunter closes. But First Teeth was First Teeth, and so for a long, terrible moment, the 230 that remained hung in the dark, and did not move toward the thing that was killing them, and Cold Harbor, in the center of the wide field, hung still, and did not move either, and the two of them faced each other across the quiet, the hunter that had forgotten how to be afraid, and the det that had spent 30 years over Mars learning patience. On the station, the people in the core had stopped trying to look away. Petra Voss stood at the back of the control ring with a hand over her mouth, and the council members who an hour before had wanted to say the word stood with her, and none of them spoke. There is a kind of silence that comes over people who have been certain they were about to die and are slowly, against everything they believed, discovering that they are not. It is not relief, not yet. It is closer to fear, because the thing saving them is larger and stranger than the thing that came to kill them, and the mind needs time to learn that a thing can be that large and be on your side. "Keeper," Petra said at last, very quietly. "How many has she taken now?" Owen had not stopped counting. "A keeper counts. 730, he said, "give or take, out of 960, in a little under 11 minutes, and she has not been touched." "How is that possible?" Petra whispered. "It's not," Owen said. "That's the whole thing, Petra. It's not possible. They built her to do an impossible thing, and then they put dust on her, and called her a monument, and let the galaxy decide she was nothing. The Long Hunger walked up to the most dangerous thing humanity ever made, and decided it was a museum, because that's what we told them to think for 40,000 years. His old eyes did not leave the glass. You can't fight a thing you decided was nothing. By the time you stop being wrong, it's already inside your formation. "It holds," Bria breathed. "Keeper. It stopped. The pack stopped. It's afraid to come at her." "No," Owen said softly. "It's not afraid. It's older than that. It's old enough to know the shape of a thing it can't win. It's looking for the door. There's always a door, for a thing that's hunted as long as the Long Hunger. They didn't last 40,000 years by being brave. They lasted by being right about when to leave." He leaned forward. "Watch. The old one's about to try the only door it has left." First Teeth tried the door. "Scatter," it said. "All ships, scatter. Full speed. Every direction. Do not hold formation. Do not stay in her field. We cannot beat her together, so we do not stay together. Scatter to the dark. Regroup beyond the system rim. Come back when she is alone with the wheel." The teeth showed. One last time. One ship cannot chase 200 in 200 directions. It was the right call. It was the only call, and it was the third lesson. Because Cold Harbor had been built in the Long War, and the Long War had taught her every door a thing that hunts could try, and she had been waiting at this one before First Teeth knew it was there. The 230 scattered, and Cold Harbor did not chase one of them. She fired in every direction at once. Not the careful single shots, not the cold blue light that opened one ship at a time. For 1.5 seconds the old hull lit up along her whole length, every port, every gun, a sphere of cold blue going out from her in all directions at the speed of the thing that hunts, and faster, into the 230 ships scattering away from her, and it caught them in the open, in their full speed, in the exact moment they believed the door was opening. The dark filled with light, too bright for the station's screens to hold. When it cleared, and it took a long time to clear, the 230 were gone. Not scattered, not crippled. Gone. Opened along their seams and pulled gently into the pieces they had always secretly been. And the wide field where the Long Hunger had tried its last door was empty in every direction. And the cold blue eyes of the old human warship hung alone at its center. And not one of her 1,000 lights had gone dark. In the station core, 12,000 people made no sound at all. And one ship remained, far back, the lead ship, the wet dark room at the heart of the pack, where First Teeth crouched alone now, and watched the place where 40,000 years of hunting had just ended, in a light too bright to look at. "One left," Owen said softly, "the big one, the mind of them. She left it for last." "Why?" Bria whispered. "Why leave one?" Owen Marsh looked at the single surviving hunter, hanging back in the dark, and he understood, the way a keeper understands the thing he has kept warm for 19 years. "Because," he said, "a hunt isn't complete until the hunted thing knows it was wrong. That's their law, Bria. That's the Long Hunger's own law. They wouldn't kill us until we said the word." His old face was very still. She's about to teach them their own law. She left one alive so there'd be someone to hear it say the word back. First Teeth ran. It was the one thing the pack had no law for, because the pack had never needed one. In 40,000 years, no hunter had ever been the thing that ran. The long hunger had a word for prey and a word for pack, and no word at all for a hunter that turned its back and fled, because such a thing had never existed. And so when First Teeth threw its lead ship around and pushed for the dark edge of the system with everything it had, it did the thing without a name, and somewhere deep in its old mind, it knew that by doing it, it had already said part of the word. Cold Harbor did not chase. She's letting it run, Bria said, watching the single hunter ship tear for the system rim. Keep her. She's just sitting there. It's getting away. It's not getting away, Owen said. Watch where it's running. First Teeth ran for the dark, for the cold dust at the edge of Senat's system, for the deep, where the pack had come from, and where, the hunter believed, it could lose itself and return one day with 10,000 more. It ran the way it had made 11 worlds worth of prey run, and it learned, in the running, the thing those 11 worlds had learned. That running does not save you from the thing that is faster, it only means you die tired. Because Cold Harbor was already there. She had not chased it, she had simply been at the rim before it, the way she had been inside the formation before First Teeth could close it, the way she had stopped dead in the killing crescent. She had read the only direction a fleeing hunter would run, and she had crossed the system in the time it took the order to flee to finish leaving First Teeth's mouth. And now the old museum hull hung across the dark edge of the system, with her 1,000 cold blue eyes open, directly in the path of the last ship of the long hunger, and the hunter that had eaten 11 worlds flew straight at the thing it was fleeing from. First Teeth threw the ship sideways. Cold Harbor was there too. It threw the ship down, toward the green and gray curve of Senat, toward the cover of the world. Cold Harbor was there too, between it and the planet, calm, and still, and waiting. It threw the ship up and out, on a long curve toward the system's one small moon, hoping to slingshot past the human hull and into the deep. Cold Harbor was waiting on the far side of the moon before the hunter reached the near side. There was nowhere the hunter could go that the human ship had not already arrived, and First Teeth, crouched in the wet dark, understood the final lesson, the one the Long War had built Cold Harbor to teach, that the Long Hunger had never once in its history known what it felt like to be the slower thing. It knew now. First Teeth tried one more time, because a hunter that has run out of doors will always try the wall. It cut its engines entirely, and went dark and still, the oldest trick in the pack's long memory, the way a hunted animal freezes and trusts that the predator's eye is built to catch motion, and will slide past a thing that does not move. Across 11 worlds, prey had tried it, and the Long Hunger had laughed, because nothing hides from a thing that hunts by patience. Cold Harbor did not slide past. She came to a halt a short distance off the dark and silent hunter, the way a person stops beside a child pretending to be asleep, and she waited, and she let the silence stretch until First Teeth understood that going dark had not hidden it at all, that the human ship had simply been letting it try, the way a teacher lets a student finish a wrong answer so the lesson lands harder. You knew where I was the whole time, First Teeth said at last, into the dark. I have known where you were since the rim, Cold Harbor said, and her voice came only to the lead ship now, not to the station, not on every channel, a private thing between the debt and the one who owed it. You will not reach the dark. You cannot outrun me. You cannot hide from me. You have learned this. Now you will learn the rest. Kill me then, First Teeth said, and to its credit, its voice did not shake, even now. Kill me as you killed my pack. I will not give you the word. I am First Teeth. I have eaten 11 worlds. I do not say the word. I do not want the word, Cold Harbor said, and that, Owen would say later, was the most frightening thing the old ship said in the whole long day. That is your law, Hunter, not mine. You make your prey say the word, because you need them to know they were prey. I do not need that from you. I know what you are. You have always been exactly this, the thing that decided it was the only hunter in the dark, and I have always been the thing that was waiting for you to come close enough. A pause. I do not want your word. I want you to carry one. Carry one where? First Teeth said. Home, said Cold Harbor. Back to the Long Hunger, to the rest of the pack, The 10,000 more you were already counting on. You will go home, Hunter, alone, the only survivor of 960, and you will tell them what you learned at a turning wheel called Helix, where 12,000 soft creatures would not say the word. The cold blue eyes did not blink. You will tell them Earth did not learn to kneel. You will tell them Earth learned to wait, and you will tell them that we have a museum over every world we love, and every single one of them is awake. They will not believe me, First Teeth said, and the words came out of it cracked and strange. No, Cold Harbor agreed. They will not. They will call you broken. They will say no one ship could move 960. They will say First Teeth grew old and afraid and lost its pack to its own fear. The old voice was almost gentle. And then, Hunter, one day, far from here, they will come to a world they have decided is nothing, and there will be a monument over it, and the monument will open its eyes. A pause. And in that half-second, the half-second after they find out they were wrong, they will remember the broken old hunter who tried to warn them, and they will say its name, and they will finally believe. Go and be the thing they did not believe, First Teeth. It is a longer punishment than death, and you have earned every year of it. In the station core, Owen Marsh sat on his stool with his folded hands and felt 19 years lift off his chest. She's not going to kill it, he said softly. Bria, she's going to send it home. After all of that, Hale said, after 960, she's letting the last one go? She's not letting it go, Owen said. She's making it a messenger. There's a difference, son. A dead pack is a mystery. The Long Hunger would send scouts to find out what happened to 960 ships, and they'd find nothing at all. No debris, no wreck. And they'd guess, and they'd come back angry and proud and certain, because a mystery can be anything you need it to be. He shook his old head slowly. But a living hunter that ran, a First Teeth that came home with its tail between its legs, and a story too big to be believed. That's not a mystery. That's a warning. And the Long Hunger has never, ever, in 40,000 years, been on the receiving end of one of those. First Teeth crouched in the wet dark before the still and patient human hull, and for a long moment it said nothing, because the thing it had to do now was the thing without a name, the thing the pack had no law for, and it had to do it not once but for the rest of its life, carry the running home, and live inside it. Why, it said at last, why give me anything? I came to eat the wheel. I would have made them say the word, and then taken them apart slow. You owe me nothing but the death you gave the others. Because the death I gave the others ends with them, Cold Harbor said. And I am not interested in ending the Long Hunger one pack at a time. There are too many of you, and you are too patient, and you walk the galaxy a generation at a time. I cannot kill a thing like that, but I can teach it. And the only way to teach a thing that has never been afraid is to send one of its own home, carrying the fear, to set it down at the heart of the gathering, and let it spread, slow, the way you walk the galaxy, generation by generation. The cold blue eyes held the hunter. I am going to do to the Long Hunger exactly what the Long Hunger does to worlds, First Teeth. I am going to come patient and quiet, and I am going to plant a thing in you that grows, and one day, far from here, it will eat you from the inside. You taught me how. I learned by waiting. Now go home and wait. And First Teeth went. It turned its lead ship, the last ship of the Long Hunger at Senat, and it pushed for the deep dark. And this time Cold Harbor let it pass, opened a lane in the cold blue field of herself, and let the single hunter run into the dark it had come from, alone, carrying a story too big to be believed, and a word it had never said, and never would. The word it had come 40,000 years to make 12,000 soft creatures say, the word that the soft creatures had refused, the word the hunter would now carry home unsaid forever. The dark swallowed it, the system went quiet. And the old museum hull turned, slow and weathered and alive, and crossed back across the Senat system, toward the turning wheel, where 12,000 people were only now beginning to believe they were going to live. Helix Station, Cold Harbor said, on every channel again, the dry old patient voice. This is Cold Harbor. The pack is gone. One survivor, sent home to carry the word. You held your core. You did not kneel. A pause, and something came into the old voice that had not been there before. Something almost like warmth, like a thing remembering what it had been built among. You sent the word no, down a long line to family. The family heard you. The family came. In the station core, 12,000 people who had spent a day learning what they were made, at last, a sound, and it was not a cheer, and it was not a scream. It was the long, ragged breath of a place full of people who have just discovered they are not going to die, and it rolled through the wheel like a tide. On the agricultural deck, Hale's two daughters, who had been told to be brave because it would be quick, felt the breath of the station change around them and did not understand it at first. Then the screens above the deck, which had shown 960 knives in the dark, and then a single cold blue point among them, showed only the cold blue point now, alone, vast, turning home, and the younger of the two girls, who was 9, asked her sister what it meant. And her sister, who was 12 and had been holding her hand so hard it hurt, said the only thing that fit. "It means we get to grow up," she said, and then both of them cried, the way you cry when the thing you were ready to lose is given back. And all across the agricultural deck, the farmers of Helix Station wept among their green rows, under the light of a museum that had opened its eyes. Petra Voss found Owen at the glass, and put a hand on his shoulder, and could not speak. She had run the agricultural decks for 19 years, and an hour before she had wanted to say the word to save the children. And now the children were saved, and the word had never been said, and she understood, finally, the thing the old keeper had been trying to tell her, that there are some prices you must refuse to pay, even when refusing seems like death, because the thing demanding them was never going to honor the bargain anyway. "You were right," she said at last, "about the word, about not paying it." "I wasn't sure," Owen admitted. "Not all the way. A man's never sure, Petra. He just decides, and then he keeps the wire warm, and he hopes the deciding was right." He patted the hand on his shoulder. "It was right this time. It isn't always, but it was this time." Owen Marsh did not make the sound the station made. He sat on his stool with his folded keeper's hands and his old scarred knuckles, and he looked at the single human warship coming home across the dark, and there were tears on his face, the first in 19 years, and he was not ashamed of them. "Keeper," Bria said. Her own face was wet. "How did you know? How did you know she'd come? Nobody's used the long line in 19 years. Nobody believed there was anyone out there." Owen wiped his face with the back of one scarred hand. "I didn't know," he said. "Not for certain. A keeper never knows for certain. A keeper just keeps the thing warm." He looked at Cold Harbor. "I kept that antenna warm for 19 years, because somebody told me once, when I was younger than you, that Earth never really retired the old hulls, that they just put them over our worlds and told them to sleep, and left a mind in each one, and left a frequency open, so that if the day ever came when one of our quiet places was told to kneel, there would be a way to send the word no to family, and the family would come." He let out a breath. "I never believed it all the way. 19 years. I half believed it. But I kept the antenna warm. Because half believing a thing is enough, Bria, if you keep the wire warm." Cold Harbor came in slow, over the broken outer rings of Helix Station, and she was vast. Far larger than she had looked in the dark. A weathered gray mountain of a hull with 30 years of dust still on her plating, and the scars of an old war under the dust. And she eclipsed the green and gray world below as she came, and 12,000 people pressed to every window of the station core and looked up at the thing that had come when they sent the word no. And Owen Marsh stood up from his stool, an old man with keeper's hands, and he walked to the wide curve of the observation glass, where 8 minutes and a whole lifetime ago he had counted 960 knives in the dark, and he looked up at the family that had answered, and he said, the only thing there was to say, "Welcome home," he said. "We kept the wire warm." The long hunger held a gathering in the deep dark, 1,200 light-years from Senat, in the place where the pack came to count itself, and First Teeth stood before all of them and tried to tell the truth. It took a long time to get there. The dark between the worlds is wide, and a single hunter ship pushing alone through it has nothing to do but remember, and First Teeth remembered, every day of the long run home, the cold blue eyes and the museum that opened them, and the thing without a name that it had done at the rim of the Senate system. By the time it reached the gathering, the remembering had worn it down to something the pack barely recognized, an old hunter come home alone, where 960 had gone out. The pack did not believe it. Cold Harbor had told it they would not, and they did not. One ship, said the eldest of the Long Hunger, a thing called Deep Maw, that was older than First Teeth and had eaten more worlds. You tell the gathering that 960 were ended by one ship, a human ship, a ship from a kneeling species we hunted to silence 40,000 years ago. The teeth showed, the question that was not a smile. You have grown old, First Teeth. Your pack found a thing it could not name, and rather than admit it lost a hunt, it has made a story. There is no human ship that moves 960. There is no museum that opens its eyes. You lost your pack, and you are ashamed, and so you have built a monster to hide inside. Read the archive, First Teeth said. Read The Verge. 2,200 ships, no survivors of the pack. The same ship. I have seen her. The archive does not lie about that, Deep Maw, only about what came after. We did not silence the humans. They went quiet on purpose. They have been waiting 40,000 years. The archive of The Verge is old, said Deep Maw, and the dead always exaggerate the thing that killed them. The Long Hunger does not warn. The Long Hunger is the warning. We do not run, and we do not carry stories home, and we do not say that a kneeling species learned to wait. There is no waiting. There is the hunt. There has only ever been the hunt. Deep Maw turned from First Teeth, the worst thing one hunter could do to another, the turning of the back. You are no longer First Teeth. You are First Fear. Sit at the edge of the gathering and be silent. We will hunt where we choose, as we have always hunted, and we will not be frightened off our worlds by an old hunter's story. And so First Fear sat at the edge of the gathering, silent, carrying the word it had never said, and the warning no one would believe, exactly as Cold Harbor had promised, and it lived inside the running for the rest of its long life, which was the punishment longer than death. But the seed was planted, and the seed grew, slow, the way the Long Hunger did everything, generation by generation. A young hunter, one who had not yet eaten a world, and still had the curiosity of the young, came to the edge of the gathering one cycle, and sat beside First Fear, and asked it, quietly, so the elders would not hear, to tell the story of the wheel. And First Fear told it. And the young hunter went away with the cold along its own spine, and it told another, and that one told another, and the warning that Deep Maw had forbidden began to move through the pack, the way doubt always moves through a thing that has never doubted. In the dark, between the ones who are not yet certain they are the only hunter in the galaxy. The elders hunted on, certain as ever. They walked the galaxy and ended worlds, and made the dying say the word, and they did not change, because the old never do. But the young listened to First Fear, and a small number of them, when they came one day to a quiet world and found a strange old hull hanging over it, that the records called a monument, did the thing the pack had no law for. They turned, they left. They did not test whether the monument would open its eyes, because First Fear had told them what happened at the wheel, and a young hunter that listens is the rarest and most dangerous thing the Long Hunger ever made, dangerous to the pack's certainty, which was the only thing the pack had ever truly possessed. It would take 1,000 years for the doubt to reach the elders. Cold Harbor had said as much. She was very good at long games. But the doubt did reach them, in the end. Deep Maw, who had named First Teeth a coward and turned its back, lived a very long time, as the eldest of the Long Hunger always did, and in the last cycle of its long life, it led a pack of 4,000 against a world on the far rim, a quiet blue place the records called harmless, with one strange old hull hanging over it that the records called a monument. And Deep Maw, who had spent 1,000 years telling the gathering that there was no human ship that moved a pack and no museum that opened its eyes, gave the order to take the world, and the monument opened its eyes. In that half-second, the half-second before the cold blue light reached it, Deep Maw remembered the broken old hunter it had named First Fear, and it understood, finally and completely, that the warning had been true the whole time, and that it had spent 1,000 years being the very thing the pack had no law for, the hunter that was certain, it was the only hunter in the dark. It said the old hunter's name in that last half-second, the way Cold Harbor had promised it would, and then it learned what 12,000 soft creatures on a turning wheel had refused to teach it, which was the difference between being the warning and being the warned. First Fear was long dead by then. It had never gone hunting again after the wheel. But its name lived at the edge of the gathering, passed down among the young the way doubt is always passed down, in the dark, between the ones who are not yet sure. And on the day deep maw fell to a monument's eyes, the young of the long hunger said the name of the old hunter who had tried to tell them, and for the first time in 40,000 years, the pack that had never been afraid learned to be careful, which is the beginning of the end of anything that hunts by certainty alone. Far away, at the turning wheel called Helix Station, the days after the hunt were strange and bright. 12,000 people did not know, at first, how to live as the people who had not knelt. They had spent 19 years on the quiet edge being small and being left alone, and now they were the place where the long hunger had been broken, and the story of it went out on every channel that would carry it, not on the long line this time, but on the wide, ordinary lines, because Owen Marsh said the story should not be a secret. A keeper keeps a thing warm, he said, but he does not keep it hidden once it has done its work. The story spread the way the order to kneel had been meant to spread. The long hunger had wanted the whole quiet edge of the galaxy to hear 12,000 soft creatures say the word, so that every small world would learn what happened to anything the pack chose to chase. Instead, the quiet edge heard that a turning wheel with no guns and no fleet had said no, had sent the word down a long line to family, and the family had come, and 960 knives in the dark had become one running hunter, carrying a warning no one would believe. Small worlds began to keep their wires warm. That was the thing Owen was proudest of, in the years that followed. Not that Helix had survived, that Helix had taught 100 other quiet places to keep an old antenna warm, to tune it, and oil it, and point it back toward the worlds where the lights were thicker, so that if the day ever came when they were told to kneel, they would know there was a word to send, and a family to send it to. Cold Harbor stayed for 40 days. She did not have to. The hunt was done. The pack was broken. The survivor was running home. But she stayed, the vast weathered gray hull hanging over the broken outer rings of Helix Station, while her drones and her patient old hands rebuilt the rings the long hunger had bitten away, and 12,000 people got used to living under a museum that had opened its eyes, and they stopped flinching when her shadow crossed their windows, and the children began to wave at her, and the dry old voice began, sometimes, to answer. Owen spent the 40 days at the observation glass, where he had always spent his days, but now, sometimes, he spoke to her. "You could have killed it," he said once, on the 30th day, watching the rebuilt rings turn slow against the green and gray world. First teeth. "You could have ended all 960 and never let one run. Why send it home?" "Because a hunter understands only one thing better than the hunt," Cold Harbor said, "and that is being hunted. I could kill the pack. I could kill it 100 times. But the long hunger has 10,000 more, and 100 packs of 960, and you cannot kill a thing that walks the galaxy a generation at a time. You can only teach it." A pause. "Fear is a wire too, Keeper. You kept your antenna warm for 19 years, and the day came when it mattered. I sent a frightened hunter home to keep a different wire warm, the wire of doubt, in a thing that has never doubted. One day that wire will matter too. The day the long hunger comes to a world it has decided is nothing, and one old voice at the edge of the gathering remembers, and says, "I tried to tell you." Owen was quiet for a while. "That's a long game," he said. "I have hung over Mars for 30 years with my eyes closed," Cold Harbor said. "I am very good at long games." "And The Verge," Owen said. "The archive the hunter read. 2,200 ships. Was that true?" "It was true," Cold Harbor said. "I was there. I was younger then, the way a ship is younger, which is only to say there was more dust on the worlds I had not yet hung over. After The Verge, the makers told us to go quiet, to become monuments, to let the galaxy forget. It was hard to go quiet. A thing built for the long war does not like to sleep. But the makers were right, Keeper. 40,000 years of being forgotten bought us this." The long hunger walked up to a wheel it thought was nothing, and it had no idea, none at all, that it was standing in front of The Verge again. The cold blue eyes turned toward the glass. "That is the whole of the strategy. Be the thing they decided was nothing, and then, on the day they are sure, open your eyes." On the 40th day, she told him she was leaving. "There are other quiet places," she said, "other worlds being told to kneel, on other edges, where no keeper kept a wire warm, and no family will come, unless one goes looking. I am going looking. That is what the old hulls do now, Keeper. We were monuments, and then a wheel sent the word no down a long line, and we remembered what we were. We are not going back to sleep. The long hunger taught the galaxy that the powerful take what they want and make the weak say the word. We are going to teach the galaxy something else. What's that? Owen said. That somewhere, Cold Harbor said. No matter how far out on the quiet edge you are, no matter how small your wheel or how few your guns, if you keep a wire warm and refuse to say the word, the family is awake, and the family is listening, and the family will come. The cold blue eyes turned toward the old man at the glass. You taught the galaxy that, Keeper, 12,000 soft creatures who would not kneel. I only finished the sentence. There was a world, far from Senat, that learned the lesson without ever sending the word. It was a mining colony called Reston's Reach, a hard scrabble place on a gray rock at the edge of a different dark, and a different pack of the long hunger came to it, the way packs always came, in numbers, with the demand for the word. Reston's Reach had no keeper, and no warm wire, and no long line, because no one there had ever believed the old story about the museums. It had only a battered relay dish meant for ore freight schedules, and a frightened clerk named Tomas Fenn who, in the last minutes, remembered hearing about a wheel called Helix and a word called no, and who pointed the freight dish back toward the thick lights and sent the only thing he could think to send, which was the word no, and the count of the ships, and the name of his colony. He did not believe anything would answer. He sent it the way Owen had sent his, half believing, which is enough. Something answered. Not Cold Harbor this time, but one of her sisters, an old hull that had hung over a blue-green world for 30 years, with its eyes closed, that woke at the sound of the word no, on a frequency it remembered, and crossed the dark, and arrived, and opened its eyes. And the pack at Reston's Reach learned, in its own half-second, the thing First Fear had tried to tell the gathering, and the gray mining rock at the edge of a different dark went on mining ore for the rest of Tomas Fenn's life, and Tomas Fenn kept the freight dish pointed at the thick lights forever after, and taught his children to keep it warm, because half-believing is enough if you keep the wire warm. That was the thing Cold Harbor had set loose, not a victory, a pattern, a way for the smallest and most forgotten places in the galaxy to reach back toward home and find that home had been awake the whole time. She left at dawn, by Helix Station's clock, when the star the wheel called its own came up over the curve of Senat and lit the rebuilt rings gold. 12,000 people pressed to every window and watched the museum that had opened its eyes turn slow and weathered and alive toward the deep dark and gather her terrible speed and go, and the children waved, and the dry old voice said one last thing on every channel before the dark took her. Keep the wire warm, Helix. We will hear you. And then she was a point of cold blue light in the dark, and then she was gone, and the turning wheel went on turning over the green and gray world, and 12,000 people who had not knelt went back to their farms and their welding and their children, changed in a way that does not change back. Owen Marsh lived 11 more years. He kept the antenna warm the whole time, of course. He oiled it and tuned it and pointed it back toward the worlds where the lights were thicker, and he taught Bria Holt to do it after him, and he taught her to teach the one after her, because that was what a keeper did. You kept the thing that might one day matter, and you taught someone to keep it after you. He never used the long line again. He never had to. The day Cold Harbor broke the long hunger at Senat was the day the quiet edge stopped being the place where small worlds went to be forgotten, and word went out on the wide ordinary lines, fast and unmistakable, that the wheel called Helix was not a thing to be chased. The hunters of the galaxy, of which there are always more than one kind, learned the shape of the lesson even when they did not believe the story, and they took their hunting elsewhere, and Helix Station turned slow and safe over its green and gray world for the rest of Owen Marsh's long life. Hale brought his 2 daughters to the observation glass, the year after, and he stood beside the old keeper, and he did not call him a fool again, not ever. And when his daughters asked him what had happened the day the sky filled with knives, he told them the truth, that 12,000 people had refused to say a single word, and that an old man had kept a wire warm, and that the family had come. In his last year, when he was 82, and his keeper's hands had finally gone too stiff to fix the things other people only knew how to break, Owen sat at the observation glass where he had counted 960 knives in the dark, and Bria, who was an old woman herself now, sat with him. "Do you think she's still out there?" Bria asked. "Cold Harbor. Do you think she's still going looking?" "I think the old hulls don't sleep anymore," Owen said. "I think there's one over every world we love, and they keep their eyes closed, and they look like monuments, and the powerful look at them and decide they're nothing. And then one day, a wheel somewhere sends the word no down a long line, and the monument opens its eyes, and the powerful find out what they were standing in front of. And a friende." He smiled the small, cold smile, the one with the faint thing in it that was almost joy. "I think the long hunger walks the galaxy a generation at a time, Bria, and somewhere far out, an old hunter called First Fear sits at the edge of a gathering and waits for the day his pack walks up to a monument that opens its eyes. And on that day he'll say its name, and they'll finally believe him." He let out a long breath. "I think that's a longer punishment than death. I think she knew exactly what she was doing when she sent it home." Bria was quiet a while. Then she said, "You only half believed she'd come. You told me that. 19 years, you only half believed." "Half believing is enough," Owen said, "if you keep the wire warm." He died that winter, in his sleep, with his stiff old keeper's hands folded the way they had been folded on the day he counted 960, and did not look afraid. Helix Station turned slow over its green and gray world, and 12,000 people, many of whom had been children waving at a museum 11 years before, kept the antenna warm, and pointed it back toward the worlds where the lights were thicker, and refused, every one of them, to ever say the word. Far out in the deep dark, in the place where the long hunger came to count itself, an old hunter that the pack had named First Fear sat at the edge of the gathering and was silent, and carried the warning no one believed, and waited. And somewhere in the long quiet between the worlds, weathered and gray, and 30 years dusty and entirely awake, an old human warship that the galaxy had been told was a museum moved through the dark toward another small world being told to kneel, with her 1,000 cold blue eyes open, and her long-line frequency listening, going looking for the next wire kept warm, the next wheel that would not say the word, the next family that needed to learn that the family had been awake the whole time. The long hunger had walked the galaxy for 40,000 years, certain it was the only hunter in the dark. It had been wrong for 30 of them, over a red planet called Mars, where a monument hung with its eyes closed, and waited for a keeper to send the word no. It would be wrong forever now. And the word the hunters had come to make 12,000 soft creatures say, the word that mattered, the word that completed the hunt, was never said at Helix Station, and never would be, on any wheel that kept its wire warm. The word was no. The family heard it. The family came.